Hey guys, welcome to Build Order Win. My name is The Truth, and today we are going to look at something that I'm very excited to bring you. It is a, as you can see by the title, it's a build order in Protoss vs. Terran. This build that I'll be showing you happens to be my best Protoss vs. Terran build. The only catch though is that it doesn't work on all maps, and we'll get into that as this video goes along. Before we start to look at the exact build order, I guess I can let this play for now. But before we go into the exact build order, which is going to be the first part of this video, and then after that we'll get into more specific circumstances that you might find yourself in while doing this build, and whatever else that comes to mind. Before we get into all that good stuff, I just want to say that I wasn't planning on making a build order video of this build yet, because it is my second best build. My best build is probably the first build order that I put on the channel. But, you know, a really good friend of mine, he's really nice and really cool. He said he's struggling with Protoss vs. Terran, and of course, you know, the person I am, I have to try to help you. So, to that guy, this is for you, because I was gonna wait to make this video. And then also, there's some other guy, I think his name is Miker, said he needed some help as well. So I figured, help two people at once. But anyway, on a serious note, let's get started with the build, and let's also talk about what it is. So, the build is already unveiling itself. You're going to go for a 9 Pylon, of course, a 13 Gateway, a 14 Gas. I scout after I make the Gateway. Versus Terran, if it's a 2-player map, I'd like to scout their natural for a proxy barracks, and then go into the main with the probe. I'm not going to talk too much about scouting. I'll save that for my scouting information video, so be sure to look out for that if you're interested. But yeah, let's stick to the build. So, the most important thing to start with, this initial setup is very basic, but you'll see this pylon in here. This is the second pylon. I rally my 15th worker to make this pylon. On other maps it differs the location, and we'll get into that as well later. And the reason for this is because if a Terran player Reaper scouts you, or even SCV scouts you, you don't want them to see the location of the pylon that you'll be making the Dark Shrine at. And I guess I didn't say, but this is a Dark Shrine macro build. This is definitely what I think most people would refer to as gimmicky. Honestly, it's a really solid build, which is why I consider it my best. But regardless, so yeah, you're fine with them scouting this. You don't want them to scout the next pylon you make, and because I like to have a pylon down here, in case they do a factory opener, which means I can drop you, I'll make a cannon in each mineral line. But again, we'll get into that later. I just wanted to explain the thought behind this pylon placement. Okay, so cybernetics core, once you make the gateway finishes, and then I'm gonna make a nexus, queue up the zealot. This is just a good habit to get into, but it's not like part of the build. It's just something that you should do anyway. There's no SCV here, so I'm going to cancel the zealot. I'm going to make a nexus, and then this is my preference versus Terran, and that is to delay warp gate. Warp gate is a very overrated upgrade, in my opinion, or research, I guess is what it is actually called. And so, and you'll see also I'm making a sentry, and then, okay, this video is going too fast for me. This is the third pylon. So the exact steps after I make a nexus, so I make a nexus, and let's go back up a little bit, and then I make a pylon into gas. Okay, wait. You make the nexus, and then you make the sentry. Okay, so it's sentry first. So you make the sentry, and then gas and pylon in no particular order. It doesn't really matter, honestly. I've revised this pylon placement to being closer to the cliff, and I'll talk about that later, but right now I'm just going to stay focused on this. And then once you can afford it, you get the mothership core. Typically it should be the next thing you make, not a probe. Okay, and then, so the sentry can defend versus the Reaper. It's a little bit trickier than the stalker, but it does win a 1v1 fight. And then just when you get around to it, you get the warp gate. Okay, and then I like to make a zealot and a stalker out of the gateway. It doesn't really matter which order, but if you make the stalker first, you can poke on the map a little bit with it, which is nice. You can clear the watchtower or move outside their base and whatnot. But okay, so once you're saturated, gonna rally down to my natural, let's go ahead and speed this up just a little bit. And once again, I'm only talking about the build order for the first segment. Okay, so here is a very key step. The Twilight Council, you want to make as soon as you can afford it, pretty much. You don't want to like completely cut probe production, but you do want that the sooner the better. And again, we'll get into that in a little bit. And then you want to make the Forge as well after you make the Twilight Council. The Forge isn't so much here for upgrades, even though I do get +1 attack when it is finished. But what's nice about the Forge in the Sentry is that as soon as you have 100 energy with the Sentry, which I guess I'll just show you, you can hallucinate a Phoenix or an Oracle, I guess whatever you want, and you can scout their base. And with that scouting, you can see if they're going to go for a quick medevac drop. And if they're going to do that, that's where these pylons come to play. You want to make a photon cannon in each mineral line. You're not going to make a Robo, and I will tell you when you should be making a Robo as well. But okay, so I just make the gas. I mean, I have 6 workers on my natural right now, if that's going to be your indicator, or around 6 minutes as well. But this gas timing is not too important, but you obviously don't want to wait like a minute. As soon as I make the gas, I send the probe that makes the gas to go to his side of the map to make a proxy pylon. But okay, so around this time as well, your Twilight Council should be done. If not, a little bit sooner. I didn't see in this game if I delayed it or not by accident. As soon as this is done, you want to make your Dark Shrine. And you should have close enough resources for a +1 attack upgrade. You see I have the gas, but I don't have the minerals, so you want to start that at an appropriate time as well. I forgot I was meant to leave the production tab on to start this video, but oh well. I think I was pretty thorough so far. Anyway, after you make the Dark Shrine takes a minute or 100 seconds to make. A gateway takes a minute to make, so you want the gateway. You want a second gateway ready once the Dark Shrine is done. And so, of course, you want to make that no later than 40 seconds after the Dark Shrine. Actually, that's not true. You want it no later than 30 seconds, I think, because I think it takes 10 seconds to transform, which it does. So the timing here is really not that important, but it's just a good benchmark, I guess. It's just a good habit to get into to actually making the gateway on time in case you do need it. And I guess I'll go over why it's important to get the Dark Shrine up when you need it. You're not going to warp in DTs when this is done, but if they were to go for like an 8-minute or 9-minute, or I guess 8-minute is the actual timing. If they're going to go for like an 8-minute or a little bit earlier timing attack with Marines, you will need a DT to defend that. I don't know. You can overcharge, obviously, if they're going to commit more. Oh, actually, I'm pretty sure you need the DT up by then. I'm not positive. I know on vaani Research Station, which is what this build is really good for, that map, you will need a DT because if you know that you have an in-base natural and the overcharge does not cover the entire outside of your base, we'll see when we go to that map. But basically, if you don't make the Dark Shrine on time, you can take damage on vaani Research Station from like an 8-minute Marine attack. Anyway, so pylons are going up. I usually make like 2 right away. You do need this pylon immediately because you will be supply blocked otherwise. Okay, second gateway. And my production before I take a 3rd base is 2 gateways, and that's it. And then I have a Forge, Twilight Council, obviously, and Dark Shrine, obviously. 3 gas in total. I don't take the 4th gas yet. And you're really not chrono boosting too much on the workers. I'm actually going to look at the worker count. I'm only up by 5 right now. That's really not that many in this matchup. Okay, Taco Bell. It's coming back for me. But okay. So the next step, which we sort of skipped an important one, at about 8 minutes, you want to take your 3rd base. I know this seems really ballsy, but we're going to see why this build works in the next 2 or 3 replays that we see. And, okay, so you make your 3rd base. After you do this, you want to warp in 2 DTs, almost always. There is an exception, and I guess that's on vaani Research Station, and we'll get into that later. So my Dark Shrine is done. I can hear it in the background. Still on 2 gateways, 3rd base, warp in 1, 2. Okay. After you warp in your DTs, your next step is going to be take a 4th gas, get a Templar Archives, and it looks like +1 attack is done, so I usually get +1 armor. If you think +1... Basically, you can get whatever upgrades you want, but get the next upgrade. I don't go for charge slots, so that's why I don't get armor right away. But again, I'm not worried about that. So Templar Archives, the Robo facility, those are your next two tech buildings that you want. And then, so you've added this gas, you've added those buildings. And then, as you can afford it, you want to add 4 more gateways, and you don't want to make too many workers in between that time. So you sort of want to cut workers, kind of, to make those gateways. And this game was a little bit ago, so I kind of messed up my build a little bit. And so if you're wondering why I'm not doing the things I was saying you should be doing, that is exactly why. I also threw away 2 DTs. That was really bad. Actually, this one forced a scan. Okay, this build is probably still not making sense, and we're going to explain exactly why it makes sense in the next video. This game didn't go so well, but we are going to get back to this game, so we will look at exactly why, because I think that's important to do. But okay, that's all I want to show from this game, because my build order does not go as I'm saying it should go, because I messed it up a little bit. In the next game, we will look at the goals of this build, why it's good, why it works, and also what exactly you want to do from this point on. Okay, so this is a different game but the same map. And before I talk about the fun stuff, I just want to finish up what the build order is going to be for this build. So let's bring up the production tab. Keep in mind I've just warped in my 2 DTs. My 3rd base is already going up, which it should be before then. God dang it, my Robo was made first. It's honestly not a big deal, but I do like to make the Templar Archives first and then the Robo. But we should see the Templar Archives be made any second now. Nope. Alright, there it goes. Okay, so it's not a big deal, like I said. But you will notice I'm adding on 2 gateways. I'm going to leave this probe here to add on 2 more when I can afford them. I'm not completely cutting probes, so I'm only making 1 right now. And then as soon as I got that production up, I'm going to start making workers again. Okay, so there's the gateways. Robo is done. And I guess the last thing that I want to talk about regarding the build is I like to make 1 observer. Chances are your opponent will make Widow Mines when they see your High Templar. But I like to make 1 observer regardless and place it right about here outside of your base. And we're going to get into why that makes sense in a second. And then, oh yeah, also, if you have a base that you feel is vulnerable, this is about the time that you want to start making photon cannons. It's very easy to make these earlier because obviously you're going for such a fast 3rd base with almost no production. But a photon cannon equals the same amount of minerals as a gateway, so you really want to get the production up first, and then you can add on your cannons. Okay, and then yeah, I guess last thing, when your Templar Archives is done, you obviously go for Storm. And then you want, I would say, 1 High Templar at each exposed base. So in this map, it's going to be your natural and your 3rd. If it was, let's say he spawned here, then your exposed bases would be mostly your main base and your 3rd base. But I wouldn't really expect to see a drop in your main. I would almost say it's almost still more likely in your natural. So, but those are judgment calls you're going to have to make, and also things that you're used to seeing on the ladder. Now let's get into why this build makes sense and what your overall goals are when you go into a match. So I've been saying this build is really good. When I designed this build, it was I think originally designed for the map Deadwing, and the reason was, if you remember Deadwing, there was no horizontal spawns, and so you were guaranteed to have a long rush distance to your opponent. And the importance of that is the way you defend is okay, so before I even say my next sentence, so this map is honestly not very good for this build. It has a pretty short rush distance, especially if you spawn non-vertically, and so the only reason I use it on this map is because this map is so bad. I could spend time trying to design a different build for it, but honestly I'd rather just use this build because it is good enough to let me win. Alright, so okay, I got there. Okay, so let's look at what your goals are. So Mr. Oracle's flying through, he's scouting. I'm looking for two main things. I've already mentioned some of this. Number one is, if he has a starport already made, making a medevac, he's got widow mines to drop on me, this is when I'm going to put photon cannons up. I do want to note, as soon as you have 100 energy, you should use the hallucination. This game was very late, and that'll be about 6 minutes, and so that will give you plenty of time to make your cannons, because the drop should come between 7:30 and 8 minutes, I would say. So, one cannon in each base, but okay. And then the next thing you're looking for is these bad boys, which are missile turrets, of course. Your DTs do not need to do any damage, and on the right map, I believe you are still going to be in the lead in the game. And we're going to see that play out in the next replays, or even this one, I guess. But, so you're looking for missile turrets. Let's say he doesn't have one up front, but you see one in each mineral line. Then maybe you want to use your DT to try to deal damage near the production lines if they're not covered by a missile turret. Even in the case where they have missile turrets in their mineral lines, you can still do worker damage if your opponent isn't ready for you. But if they have it near the wall, then you really don't want to try to go in at all. So of course, if we look at my vision, I do see the missile turret. So that's just an important thing to keep an eye out for. But okay, so I've warped in my 2 Dark Templar. And you might be thinking, why would you warp in 2 still? You know, you just said you can't deal damage. Well, the way you actually stay alive with this build is not by killing your opponent's workers and thus slowing them down. It's by making them use a scan for every single time they want to move down the map. So from about here, which is way out of missile turret range, to all the way down here, or here, wherever they decide to attack, you want there to be just a path of DTs. Now, of course, you don't want 10 Dark Templar to be on the map, because that's just unreasonably expensive to make sense. And you'll notice, I'm just going to look at my units tab right now. I have to keep this stupid thing up. Anyway, 2 Dark Templar, and if we look at my main army, I've got these 3 units, and that's it. My base is up. I'm going to let this video play, this replay play a little bit. We're going to keep an eye on this DT and just sort of what I'm doing with it, but more importantly, or I guess as importantly, I'm not warping in any more units that aren't Dark Templar right now. Okay, so I'm going to keep it here. One more here, so if he runs up, scans, kills it, wants to keep running, he's going to run right into this one. Once he gets past this guy, I'm going to put a pylon here, and so I can warp in more DTs and have them ready. And so this is sort of, you want pylons along the path that they're going to move to your base. And like I said, this map is a short rush distance, so you cannot do this as well as you would be able to on, say, Deadwing or vaani Research Station. But okay, Now the next really important thing you want to do with this probe, or just a probe in general, is make sure you can cover your drop lanes. This is a obviously very potential drop lane for this map. If you don't have vision, I would say one of the worst case scenarios is if your opponent goes, if they send their 2 first medevacs, you'll know it's 10 minutes into the game, that's when the medevacs come out. If he sends his 2 first medevacs, drops right into your base, because you're relying on these DTs to buy you time, and just to make it so your opponent either can't move across the map because he's going to run out of scan energy, or he can, but he's going to save tons of energy and thus not benefit from dropping mules. And before we see this drop fold out, or unfold, or whatever, I just want to mention, this still might not seem like a viable strategy because of how expensive DTs are. And something I wanted to say was, you know, if you hear about a Dark Templar strategy versus Terran, I think most people take one or two, they have one or two opinions about the build. It's either, I don't want to do a Dark Templar build because it's gimmicky and it's like, if I don't do worker damage, then I'm probably going to lose. And the other approach is, or the other viewpoint is, okay, the DTs have a potential to just win me the game outright. And so I'm going to do a Dark Templar build because easy wins, right? I mean, if you're winning 25% of the time because they don't have detection, then, I mean, how bad can the build be? This build is definitely a middle road. You can win the game outright, and very often if your opponent opens with a fast factory, they won't have missile turrets, and you can do so. I would say at least half the time versus that. But if you don't do any damage, like I said, you are still in totally fine shape. if you're playing on a map that, or actually on any map that I recommend. And you'll see that in the description below. So this is totally undefended. I did have the Pylon see it, but I wasn't paying attention to it, I don't think. You'll note I have only recently... Did I warp in units? I can't tell. The stupid UI. I don't know if I warped in these two stalkers recently or not, but regardless, I have very few units here. And so we're just going to see how I defend this. You don't want to divert from your strategy, right? You want to warp in DTs to deal with this. They might have saved up scans, and that would obviously not be a good thing, but you're going to rely on your overcharge and your Dark Templar warp-ins. Keep in mind, we really have only had 2 gateways up for most of this time. Okay, Dark Templar. So, and it's very important to keep your Dark Templar separated from each other right now. I am not going to send this dude in until they are out of scan range or until the scan goes away. It's that simple. Okay, he's going to use a scan. I mean, he cannot do this all day unless he's been saving scans for a year, which will make his standing army weaker, his economy weaker, and all that good stuff. Immortals are going to be useful. I do like to make them after my first observer. The main reason for that, I would say, isn't because Immortals are like really great units, but it's because the Robo is a production building, and since you have it, you do want to use it. But I do think Immortals are very underrated and underused in this matchup. Regardless, okay, so that was a 2-drop, and I defended it without seeing it. But okay, keep in mind my DTs did no damage. He did something that is very bad. When they move across the map like this, like for their first push, I'm almost always going to win the game, just because that's sort of what I'm wanting them to do, and that's what will happen most of the time. And so you're seeing I'm still sticking to my main strategy. There is a point in the game where you want to stop warping in DTs for this reason, and I would say that's when you have a standing army that can beat their standing army. So okay. So, I'm not sure if I could beat their standing army or not. If you don't think you can, then sending another DT out here would be the right move. And just keep on forcing scans. And right now he's out of scan energy, so he doesn't want to move out because he's not going to be able to kill my DTs. Okay. Behind all of this, I would probably recommend taking a quick 5th gas at your 3rd base. Normally you don't want to do that, but with this build you do want the extra gas in case you have to keep warping in DTs because you still want High Templar in your army. Okay. And then really, after this is not really any core, like, key point in the game where you have to remember to do something. You can delay getting your Robo Bay for a while. If you feel like you have a big lead, like I do this game, you'll notice I'm up by a lot of workers. And I'm probably up in upgrades as well, but that's sort of irrelevant. You can delay this Robo Bay for a while, but if the game's not going so great, then you almost will definitely need to delay the Robo Bay to survive. But okay. So this game is pretty much wrapped up for what I want to show you, and then we'll get into another replay. But yeah, I would say, you know, also it's sort of good to have this be true whenever you play vs.Terran, but having good map vision is very important. Pylon, 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 observer, that sort of thing. So oh yeah, last thing, I've yet to research charge or blink, and I do get blink first. I think charge dots are not good with this build, and the reason is because of Widow Mines, and that's about the only reason you need. But okay, so I'm still on the original gateway count that I said you should try to go up to quickly after taking your 3rd base. Only now am I making more gateways, and part of the reason is because I've been making Immortals this whole time. I have 3 in my army. But okay. So Colossus, blink, more gateways, and then you're just, you know, at this point in the game, it's going to be hard for me to lose. If the game is closer, then you just want to play it out like a standard PvT. You know, take a 4th base when you think you're super safe, and just work towards getting your Colossus and High Templar Deathball army. But, alright, that's all I want to show for this replay, and let's get into the next game. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this replay that I have loaded up here. Last game was an example of a game that went really poorly on paper, but I still ended up winning. And just to recap, I got no worker kills with my Dark Templar that I made. It was a bad map, and he also went for an early drop. This game is going to be another example of a very bad scenario that you might find yourself in. So I'm going to talk about some mistakes that I made this game that could have helped prevent this from happening, and we'll also see what to do in the case that this ends up happening. So, as you see, I've made my pylons with Mr. Proby, that's way up here, and I have 2 probes on the map. You don't need 2. The last pylon that I would recommend making is right here, or here, and the purpose is so after they get through this front line of warp-in zone and DTs, you can warp in another DT from a closer location than your third base. But okay, so after you make those pylons, you should take this watchtower and then make a pylon here. Now, I'm just going to show my supply. You'll see I'm 69 out of 94 supply, so I'm way over supply right now. You might be thinking that's a very bad mistake to make, and it's kind of true, but like I said, you should make a pylon here. And I know it seems like a waste, but normally making pylons to spot for drops is in place of making an observer. And there are pros and cons to that, of course, and I'll get into that again in my scouting information video that will be coming in the future. But for the meantime, what I want you to think of this pylon, if I were to make it, and these pylons, or actually no, just this pylon that I should have made, you should just be thinking of, instead of spending 25 minerals and 75 gas and the production time from a Robo, as well as 1 supply, which counts as resources as well, you're making a pylon, and that's of course 100 minerals. They both spot for drops, and again I'll get into pros and cons with pylon, but regardless, okay, so watchtower, pylon, these are the next 2 steps. I failed to do that this game, and because of that, my opponent did a very smart move. I think he recognized what I was trying to do, or maybe this is just his decision that'll make every game on this map, I don't know. But he's going to go for a very early drop, about as fast as you can do it with 2 medevacs. Now if we look at my units tab, by the way, I just want to remind you guys that this is the first time I've seen this coming in. Okay, so 2 Dark Templar, these are across the map of course, 2 Stalkers and a Sentry between my natural and third base, and then a Mothership Core between my third base and main. Or whatever, you guys know. Okay, this map's weird. And then I have a High Templar here, but it does not have Storm, and Storm is nowhere near finishing. This was probably made too late, but that's not important for right now. I believe, yeah, I must have made this cannon before adding gateways, and like I said last game, it's a mistake to do this because you need this production just in case the worst case scenario is going to happen to you. So, let's see how I react and respond and end up defending this and then going on to win the game. Also, my Immortal gets picked off. He spawn killed it. That's BM. My High Templar gets a useless feedback off and then dies. Again, very bad. Only 1 overcharge got used. I could have done another one, but my Mothership Core is caught out of position. Another mistake by me. But of course, we have Dark Templar. And he's seen the DTs on the map. He's been scanning for them because he's trying to move out with these guys. And because of this, he has 1 scan left. So he can kill this guy. If I make another one, he can't really kill that. So he's got to do what damage he can or just leave the base. So he's going to decide just to leave. He doesn't really have much left anyway. Okay, so this was really bad. I didn't macro during this because I'm a noob. But okay, but we've not taken too much damage from that initial drop, which I'm sure surprises most of you. But wave 2 is coming right now. So if I had a pylon here, or like here, I could warp into DT and cover for this location. I already know he's gone through these DTs. I've forced him to scan for both. Okay. Instead, I have to make one back here, and thus he has less distance. He has less scans that he has to use. And I actually want to break down the cost of a scan compared to a Dark Templar, because I know a lot of you think that DTs are expensive. started to talk about this last game, but I got distracted. Anyway, so a Dark Templar is 125 minerals and 125 gas. A scan is the equivalency of what a mule could have been, and a mule mines 240 or 270 minerals. Now, 125 plus 125 for a DT, added up, gives you 250. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not a good way of thinking about it, because gas is more expensive or valuable to Protoss than your mineral count is, and that's true, but something important that you should know is gas and minerals mine at the same rate. Now, the catch to this simple logic is that if you're fully saturated on a base, you will mine more minerals than gas, and so if you're on 2 bases fully saturated and you don't have a 3rd base, then the logic of sacking DTs for scans and having it be worth it, or at least break even, it doesn't really make sense anymore. But if you get a fast gas at your 3rd base, you're going to end up bringing in more gas income than mineral income at this base, and because of that, the gas that you're spending for DTs doesn't really matter. You're sort of planning on spending it, right? Because you're most likely going to make them, and if you're not, you make more High Templar. So it's a win-win, I guess. Or, the worst case scenario is really you may have to make DTs. If you don't have to make DTs for defense, then you get to make more High Templar, which is a good thing. So anyway, so yeah, it's basically a trade, 250 resources for at least 240, and sometimes you kill a unit, sometimes the mule would have brought in 270 minerals. So okay, I just wanted to break down the numbers. I'm not going to do that very often throughout this channel's history, but I felt like it was important to do so now. But okay, so I'm still sort of lost in trying to regroup myself in this game, and he's going to keep pushing the pressure. But I think his macro was not very good either this game. You can see he's banking a lot of money. But he's going to keep dropping me. I'm out of position. Mothership Core should be here, and doesn't even have energy. High Templar should be at my natural, High Templar should be here. I don't really have any of this stuff set. Oh, he actually killed my Templar Archives. I forgot to talk about that, but whatever. And here comes another drop. So he's going to keep me pretty frantic right now. And normally, at this stage in the game, you would have a Storm ready, you would have Warpins ready, and Overcharge ready to defend versus this. So, okay. I just wanted to show another example of how things can go poorly if you make a couple of mistakes here and there. But despite this, you can still win. So that's what I want to show in this game, as well as last game. Okay. And now you'll notice at this point, if you look at the minimap, I don't have any more Dark Templar. This is about the point. In this game, I don't want you to think 13 minutes, okay, stop making DTs for this strategy of trading a DT for a scan. Instead, the thought process here is you have access to High Templar. A DT for a scan right now, he's figured out the strategy, right? There's a good chance they're going to save up some scans. And really, I don't know. High Templar are good with Storm. So your gas, would rather go there, like I mentioned earlier. But okay. I do have this guy made already, so I'm just setting him out here. He's basically acting like an observer right now, and that's really his only purpose. But trading for a scan is not bad, to say the least. Or actually, I guess that's exactly what it is. It's not bad. Once again, we're in a situation where normally I would defend this very easily in a normal game. But because I don't really have the units I need, I'm going to keep on warping in DTs and trickling them into his army. Overcharge should have been used, but I decided I wanted to save the energy. But I guess more importantly, it could have been used there. And okay. And you'll notice no Robo Bay. I feel like this game is not going well. I'm going to stick with the units I already have access to making and not spend a lot of resources just to get that first Colossus out, right? If you think about it, it's 300 minerals, 200 gas for a Colossus, 200 minerals, 200 gas for the Robo Bay, 200 minerals, 200 gas for Thermal Lance, and all that money gets compounded into the price of one Colossus. And then when you make two, obviously you're spending less on 2 as a whole. That's just sort of basic economics. But okay, so I don't think I really need to show the rest of this game. Honestly, I haven't watched this far into the replay again, so I don't know how this goes. This is just some simple DT harass. You have Dark Templar, why not use him like this? Another Doom drop. Once again, I don't have vision. Watchtower. Pylon. Very important. This Pylon does see it though, so that's lucky. And he's not going to go for the drop. Despite all this harassment, I'm up in 10 workers. Up by 10 workers. His 3rd CC only recently landed. And so I have a big lead right now, despite all the harassment that has been going on. Or not a big lead, but a decent lead for sure. My upgrades are 2-1 versus 1-1, so I have an upgrade lead. I want to see my +3 attack's almost done. He's got 2-2 coming halfway through. Blah, 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 blah. Now, how do you win with this build? I guess we can look at that. Most of the games that I win versus Terran end up going a very similar way, and that is I get 3 bases or 4 bases, I defend, 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 and then they will, like half the time I would say, attack into me, because as a Terran player, that is a very viable strategy to attack into the Protoss. And then I end up winning that decisively, and then I just select all my units and just go across the map. That's how I win a lot of games versus Terran. And that's probably how this game's going to end, honestly. Otherwise, you just do normal Protoss things. You keep expanding, keep getting upgrades, keep adding Colossus, and just all the good Protoss things that you should know how to do for sure. There's nothing really unique about this build in terms of the late game. Once again, though, Blink is only just now finishing. I like to get that about the same time that I get my Colossus out, but it's a good upgrade to have as well. And then Charge is good, but honestly, I think it's very overrated in this matchup. And I'm not going to go into detail, but you'll just have to take my word for not getting it right away for this build at the very least. Get it after Blink every time with this build. But okay. So, if we look at the supplies, I'm way up, and I'm just going to go across the map and kill him, I think. Maybe when I get my Colossus, I don't know. But anyway, this is going to wrap up this replay. I think I want to look at one more game. And it's actually going to be, we're going to hop back into the first replay, and the Widow Mines. And the reason for that is because I end up losing that game, and I want to show you all my mistakes so that way you can avoid making them for yourself. But okay. This is just being annoying. Totally not necessary. One good way to beat Terran in the late game, if you're struggling, is Guerrilla High Templar on the side of the map that you think they'll attack. So one High Templar here, one here. Very good. They're going to most likely attack through here. This guy can come in. This guy can come over. And the flanking storms are honestly how you beat Terran, at least on the high level. So okay, finally the Pylon. Finally, too little, too late. Me, too little, too late. High Templars here, cool. And there's not much more to say. I guess I just feel like I should let you guys watch how this game concludes. And from here, it's just a move, pretty much. I have 3-3. He has 3-3 as well. He's not. He's 30 supply under max, though. I guess one really important thing is to add on enough gateways in the late game. Going up to 20 is totally acceptable in this matchup. Flanking Storm. This is the point where I've selected all my units, so my High Templar from my other bases are now coming in to fight. And there you go. Okay, we're going to go into the next replay. Okay, so back to game one. I'm going to hopefully spend less than just like 5 minutes back on this replay. Again, I'm just going to talk about the mistakes I made in this game, which led to me losing, so hopefully you can not make those same mistakes. So number one, we already saw this, but I'm just going to show it again. Losing a Dark Templar and not killing anything, and losing it without them scanning as well, is a very bad mistake. especially when you only have 2 production buildings. It can be very costly for sure. Okay. And then, of course, we already saw this, but my next DT dies to a scan. I honestly feel like this is good enough. Making them use a scan is okay with me, I guess. It's sort of very okay at this stage in the game. Normally, you want them to have to use a scan as soon as they move out. But, okay. So, the next thing to notice before we go into my other mistakes, normally, what you'll see Terran players do in this matchup is go 3 racks, factory, and starport into a 3rd command center. If they want to be very aggressive, they will add on 2 more barracks, which you see right here. And I'm only pointing this out because it does mean it's going to be a little bit harder to defend. If you're playing on a good map, or a recommended map that I have in the description below, you should be fine. But I just want to point that out for this game's sake. Okay. Normally versus Terran, you want to scout with your observer to see that. This game, we don't get observer until much later, so we can't do that. Because he's doing this setup, it's okay to skip on making workers for a little bit. But you still probably want this 5th gas to come up quicker than normal. But okay, so my next mistake. If you look at the units tab, I have 2 DCs on the map. 1 at the watchtower, this is useless, honestly. And 1 here. I think my logic with this was, once he moves out and kills this Dark Templar, I can run this guy in, and until that happens, he gives me some extra vision by having this watchtower. But regardless, yeah, the fact that he just picked up his units right away was also very bad, a very bad thing to happen. I wonder if I saw this or not. Let's assume that I saw this, though, with this Dark Templar. You know, in this sort of scenario, like a pylon up here would be very helpful. But it's a very specific scenario to defend versus, and that's another reason why this map is worse than others, for sure, for this map. But we're going to go off what we see here. This pylon does spot these drops, so right now what I should be doing is warping in Dark Templar. And I should warp in like 1 here maybe, or just warp in a bunch right here and just send them out 1 by 1. Make sure they're spaced evenly, so that way he has to burn his scans as soon as he wants to drop his units. If he goes right into your base, then have your overcharge ready and have your units ready. Now, one last thing I want to say, 10-minute mark is when they can do that 2 medevac drop. It's a very important timing to know, because right now we're at the 11-minute mark. And so my mothership core is up here. I saw this coming with this pylon, and I decided to leave this mothership core here because I knew he had to have more units out on the map. Right? At the 10-minute mark, these are the units that he has out on the map. At the 11-minute mark, he should have more, and this is the units that he has that are extra. Typically, I would say from the 12-minute mark on, when you see a 2 medevac drop coming into one of your bases, Terrans will almost always attack another base with a ground army, or another drop. It could be either or. So you should keep that in mind, but at the 11-minute mark, I should have had my mothership core here and ready to defend. Keep in mind, this is like worst case scenario though, considering he went 5 racks before 3rd CC. He did a 2 medevac drop straight from his natural, so my DTs didn't get to burn any scans and delay this push a lot. So far this game is going very poorly, but I'm not dead yet. Okay, the CT's going back to help. This guy is just chilled here. He's gonna, make him burn a scan, slow him down a little bit. This DT really should have been further out here. And then I probably still want to control the watchtower with something. You'll notice that I lost the army when it was around here. I should have something to spot for this side. This pylon might not be enough, but in case he drops up this sideline, I need to be able to see it ahead of time. And then the same thing for over here. I should probably have some pylons over here or observers, but I would recommend pylons because you want to save that gas. And as well as the production time on the Robo, but we've already talked about that. But okay, let's go ahead and resume. Adding on more gateways. Ba-ba-da. My next CT is ready to go in there. Alright, so here he comes. Now, if a game goes this poorly, you are relying on one thing alone, and that is your High Templar. you need your storms to either be good, or you need to be really patient with your storms so that the Terran player can't commit, which buys you more time to warp in units or DTs or whatever. So you'll see, one storm good, second storm bad. Right there, that sort of sealed the deal for me losing, because I really needed to make better use of that second storm. So once again, I haven't really been crippled. My economy is way better than his. My production is up. I'm making immortals. Still continuing with upgrades, but I've lost a little bit too much considering that he went for that 5x strategy. And so all these things combined is what contributed to me losing this game. I'm trying to come over here. This storm, pretty good, but honestly, how great can it really be when his units are spread out? And yeah, there's not really a ton left to say. You're seeing I'm still trying to desperately rely on these DTs, but he just has too much scan energy for that to work. Sometimes it will work though. Sometimes that'll be your last effort of defending, and it can definitely work for sure. If you're under fire like this, cut workers, make more gateways. That's an easy mistake to make, and I did it this game, or I made too many workers this game. But it's definitely a way to help your situation, I would say. And I don't have charge, so my zealots are much less effective here. But okay. Let me explain why charge is not an upgrade I would recommend going for early on this build. And I guess I'll end with this note as well. So, when you have High Templar and charge lots, High Templar are really slow, as I'm sure you guys know, and charge lots are really fast. So, alright, I'm going to pause this so I can actually think what I'm trying to say. So what ends up happening, as I know you guys already know where I'm going with this, your charge lots rush into the enemy, your High Templar are slowly coming up behind, and the units don't really work together. The heavy gas cost of the High Templar, and the fact that zealots cost no gas, that part works. The rest of the composition, the functionality of charge lots sprinting in and High Templar being too slow, really is not good at all in my opinion. I know it can work for sure, but then having Widow Mines here, it's easier to nullify the Widow Mines' effectiveness if you don't have charge, even if you're still making zealots. This way you can keep your army balled together. If they want to come to you, you storm them, and if they don't want to come to you, then you just keep defending back. It's really that simple. So, okay. And, I think this basically does it. I mean, I have a lot of production, my economy's great, but it's just not enough because of how poorly the rest of the game went. And it's really that simple. But you see, it's still close. I mean, I don't die easy with this build. But, alright, at this point, there's no way of winning. Okay, so thanks guys for watching. I know this video went on really long, or at least I'm assuming it did, but I really wanted to cover this build very thoroughly, and hopefully I did cover everything. And I guess if you guys enjoyed it, just stay tuned for more stuff. And yeah, thanks for watching guys. I'll see you guys next time.